All right. Well,
What's
hey,
up,
we
Scotty?
are. Huh?
Hi, Scott.
What's going on, Steve? Good morning, good afternoon. It's still morning time out there when we just crossed into afternoon time here in Texas. What's going on?
Man, just another beautiful Sunday in San Diego. And I've got my usual. I've got my coffee bean and tea leaf iced tea and my warmed up butter croissant.
There you go. There you go.
Pretty much every other day of the week here in San Diego for me.
Well, for those of you that don't know who our guest is here, he is a rock star, runs two amazing podcasts, but a little bit more on Steve's bio here. He is America's reinvention expert and has taught thousands how to nichetize by identifying and monetizing their what? That is the one thing that we were born to do. His singular approach for realizing permanent positive change blends proprietary methods with ancient wisdom and revolutionary lessons from modern thought leaders and forms a proven system for ultimate achievement in business and life. He's a successful entrepreneur who's applied his business acumen and communication skills to a wide range of endeavors. He's worked as a radio and nightclub DJ. Mr. Bold owned his own alcohol-free nightclub at the age of 20. The Funky Pickle. I find that so funny. That's awesome. Launched the first wine and spirit store on CompuServe's Electronic Mall in 1993. Launched one of the internet's fully functional e-commerce websites with liquorbywire.com. Funded the Bold Movement, one of Chicago's largest boutique real estate development companies. Co-founded San Francisco-based liquor.com. Founded and runs the Reinvention Workshop and founded and hosts Reinvention Radio. But one of the most important things, he is the man, the myth, the legend behind New Media Summit. Good morning, Steve Olsher.
That's pretty good. Oh, man. And the applause to boot. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was looking at that bio. I'm going, in what archives of the internet did you find that one?
When you search, when I'm like looking for bios on everybody, I'm finding whatever I can.
We have a page that evidently is a little bit too hidden where it's it has the new bio and I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen that bio for a long time. You dug in the archives. I love it.
I think I pulled it off of Amazon actually because
that would make sense.
I think I pulled it out of Amazon because that's pulling out because you are the author of What Is Your What as well. This book out here.
Very impressive. Thank you for being the third person to buy the book this month. I appreciate that. And we're at the end
Actually, I didn't buy it. I wanted it at your event.
We handed it to you. Damn it.
But it's great. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so, man.
Steve, why don't you talk a little about your two shows, or let you kind of run. Where do you want to go, man? Talk about the shows and go from there first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here we are on International Podcast Day, and awesome, Scott, for you to put all of this together. So thanks so much for spearheading this. And we had an opportunity to meet at our event, the New Media Summit, which is a fairly new event. We've actually only been doing it now for about a year. We've done 3 of them in a year. And it's an event where we bring in people like you, Scott, and Amy was just on, and Raven, I know, is on hanging out with us, and other podcasters who have just awesome shows. And we give attendees the opportunity to pitch the podcasters on who they are and what they do, and they literally get booked on the spot, man. So that's a big part of what we're doing now, and love that event. And it's just it's a lot of fun for sure. But because we keep it a little bit more intimate than typical events, when we only have 150 attendees there who have the opportunity to hang with these 40 top podcasters, real relationships are born out of that event. And it's become, I've done events for years, as you said. I mean, I had my own nightclub when I was, technically I started when I was 19, but we opened the doors when I was 20. So, I mean, I've been doing entertainment type things for decades. But this has quickly become one of my favorite events because I get to know people like yourself and others who just frankly in other forums I would never have a chance to meet, and then to be able to introduce you guys to 150 awesome coaches and authors and speakers and solopreneurs and small business owners, et cetera. It's super cool, man, to be able to combine a lot of what I love in the event there. And then, as you said, I've got my own shows as well, Reinvention Radio, which we do. Both of our shows we do as a live radio show, and we then repurpose those shows as podcasts. And so Reinvention Radio we've been doing off and on since 2009, pretty much on since 2015. And then we just launched Beyond 8 Figures, which is our new show that we sit down exclusively with entrepreneurs who have either exited for more than $10 million or currently run businesses that generate more than $10 million annually. And so on that new show, it gives us a pretty interesting opportunity to sit down with entrepreneurs from all walks of the spectrum and all industries. And super excited about that new show as well.
Yeah, I'm loving listening to both and binging both shows quite a bit, and along with everybody else's in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, sweet.
What has been the biggest aha or biggest nugget you've taken from Beyond Eight Figures and interviewing your guests on there, Steve?
You know, it's interesting, man. It's like there's been a lot, right? A lot of really, I mean, just when you sit down with billionaires, as we've been able to do, and you sit down with people who have sold their companies for literally billions of dollars, and others who have sold for 9 figures, others have sold for 8 figures, and so on. It is interesting to get an inside look on really what it takes to start and scale and exit from that sort of business. And what I will say is that, you know, the main takeaway that I have gleaned so far over the course of the last couple of months since we started doing the show is that it's interesting, man, because you don't have to work any harder, so to speak, to build an 8-figure plus business than you do to build a 5-figure business, right? And it's interesting because we think that all of this work and all of these different types of things have to happen in order to scale to 8 figures and beyond. And the reality is that's not always the case. As a matter of fact, when you're able to scale, oftentimes you're actually able to work less hard, if you will, than those who are trying to build a 5 or 6 figure business. So that's been one of the key takeaways, is it's not always like the numbers in terms of dollars of revenue don't always correlate with the amount of work that you think that it takes to make that happen.
Yeah, it'd be maybe working smarter, not so harder, right? Just working with the experts.
Yeah, and really staying within the lane of what it is that you are really, really good at. And you know, you may have to cut off a piece here or a piece there for some key folks, or maybe to bring in capital to really help you grow that business. But, you know, the truth is, would you rather have 25% of a $100 million company, so that's worth $25 million, like let's just run the easy numbers here, or would you rather have 100% of a $100,000 company? You know, and the truth is that sometimes cutting off those pieces to bring in the right people who can help you scale and who do things much, much better and differently than you do actually works to your benefit in ways you can't even possibly imagine, not the least of which is just peace of mind around not having to do it all. And, you know, you may end up owning less of the company, but it could very well end up being a much larger endeavor.
That definitely makes sense out there. Definitely makes sense out there. Let's talk a little about Reinvention Radio, because it's a different show, obviously, and it's so awesome out there. What's been your biggest learning nugget from that?
Yeah, you know, Reinvention Radio is it's first and foremost a lot of fun. I mean, both of our shows we do sort of morning zoo style, if you will, where I've got myself and a couple co-hosts and others that chime in every now and again. So, you know, we do keep it round robin. We keep it it's more of a conversation than it is just a straight interview, so to speak. And on Reinvention Radio, what we've been able to do is attract people who are dismantling the status quo, right, in their own industries, in their own lives, et cetera, or are tackling big issues in a unique way. And so what we do on Reinvention Radio is we give people an opportunity to, of course, not only share what it is that they're doing now, but then the journey of how they have reinvented their lives across the way to get to where they are now. And so every show has a theme, and whether it's reinventing fear or reinventing sex or reinventing online marketing, or, I mean, you name it. We've covered many, many, many subjects over the years now. And what's really interesting is that it's more often than not the people who are reinventing a particular part of business or a part of life, like reinventing relationships or something like that, right? These people usually have gotten to where they are and are teaching what they're teaching because they've experienced these issues or these. I guess the best way to put it is they're kind of creating what it is that they wish they had, what they needed. And so oftentimes just hearing the stories of how these folks created what it is that they're doing is just such an interesting journey of watching them go from point A to point Z. And never would have they connected the dots between those 2 points if you had told them that, 5, 10, 15 years ago. It just would not have even been possible. And so just watching that unfold and really then understanding how they got to where they are now and why they're doing what they're doing is oftentimes even more powerful than just the understanding of what it is that they're doing now.
Mm-hmm. That definitely makes sense. And it's always a surprise along the way, I'm sure.
Huge surprise.
It's never a straight and narrow road, right? It's full of twists and turns, and who knows what we'll do in 5 years right now, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. And in reality is that, we're all reinventors of our own lives in various ways. Whether it's in relationships or it's in business or it's with the family or whatever it is. And so to have that forum for people to come on and share that expertise has really provided a lot of education for me, right? And for my co-hosts, and of course for the listeners as well. But it is interesting to know that just simply how things are today, it does not necessarily reflect how things are going to be for the rest of your life, right? And I think that's what a lot of us need to hear is no matter how hard things are in this particular moment, it's just this particular moment. And, like this upcoming month, we're dedicating all of October to a theme around reinventing homelessness and trying to tackle the whole issue of homelessness, which, it's a real problem. It's a massive problem. My wife and I were celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary. We were in Portland. And we had come from Chicago several years ago to San Diego, and Chicago has a bad homeless problem. San Diego definitely has a bad homeless problem. And for some reason in Portland, it really hit me hard. And I don't know why, because I've seen it before, but it just seems like everywhere we looked in Portland, there were just so many homeless people. And I was like, God, we've got to bring more awareness to this subject and see what we can do to reinvent the whole problem of homelessness. And that's what we're doing right now is bringing on folks from all sorts, people who were homeless, right? And who are no longer homeless, and what they did to get from being homeless. And well, first of all, where they were, because like when I look at the people who are on the streets, like I know at some point they started out somewhere, right? Like they started out in a family somewhere. Very few people were abandoned and put on the doorstep of a firehouse, right? Like very few babies were abandoned in that way, right? In some way, shape, or form, everyone started in a house. It could have been a horrible house, and that's part of the reason maybe why they left, right? But they started somewhere. And it's just that whole uncovering for me of what happened to get them to the point of being, born into a family and then no longer having that support system. Like what happened, right? And if it happened to them, is it possible that it could happen to you? And is it possible that it could happen to me? And the answer, of course, is yes, right? So that's part of what I want to try to discover as well during this next month here in October is, how does that even happen, right? Because we can address the sort of the symptoms, if you will, but we need to address, I believe, the underlying disease that kind of starts this, starts people down that path. And if we can kind of nip that in the bud, maybe it will prevent some folks from having those symptoms, so to speak.
Yeah, we here in Austin, we've got a serious issue, and the city's taken well, I won't say the city. Some entrepreneurs are taking the opportunity to create mini home communities for the homeless and having people, get off of drugs to get there, because that's a big homelessness problem. This is drug addicts, or the people that suffer from mental illnesses as well, being placed back on the streets because they have no place to go. Yeah. But it's, you got to figure out what that root cause is. What's causing that? Are cities buying homeless bus tickets on one-way tickets down to different areas? In some cases, that's happening too.
Yeah, and I know in some cases that has, and frankly, if you're in one of those, let's just say weather inclement city, like where, like Chicago is a perfect example. I mean, we got extreme hot, and extreme cold, right? And I can't imagine being able to survive that, being on the streets, especially the extreme cold. I mean, when you're homeless and you've got wind chills of 30 below zero, it's like, how do you even survive that, right? And the answer is, well, some people don't. And so, I mean, I could certainly see in certain circumstances how actually putting them on a bus and sending them to a place that has better support systems or better weather or so on, might actually be a reasonable thing to do. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, you're just getting rid of the problem, you're just pushing it on other people. But there are some cities, like there's a city in Canada, which is called Medicine Hat. I think it's a small city. I was just reading about this, but I think it's called Medicine Hat, and they're in Canada. And we were going to have the mayor on to talk about what they do with the homeless. And obviously Canada, right? I mean, weather there can be brutal.
A little chilly, just a little chilly.
But we were going to have the mayor on. Unfortunately, he had to bail. But they have basically a 100% track record of taking the homeless and getting them back on their feet. And so I know it happens in some cities where they see this problem and they have, I don't know if it's the resources or if it's the skills, or I don't know what they're doing to combat this issue. And that's why I really wanted to have him on, to have him share with that. But I know that it's possible. If Medicine Hat can have a 100% success rate, and we're not talking, I know it sounds like a small city in Canada. I mean, we're still talking about hundreds of homeless that they've helped over the years. And with almost like I don't think recidivism is the right word, because I think that just applies to jail. But in terms of returning to the streets, there's probably a word for that. But they don't, to the best of my knowledge, they don't have any occurrences whatsoever of people who end up being homeless, who go through their process, returning to the streets.
Wow.
So, So anyway, that's what we're trying to bring and shed some light on over the next month here. So that's what's going on in Reinvention Radio Land right now.
That's definitely reinventing homeless. I would tell you that. Find a way to do that. That's huge. That's awesome. And that's a great passion to help people overcome that, because that's what we should be doing. If we're successful enough out there and you help give back, and help others overcome hurdles. Because you've been doing that for a while. You mentioned this a little bit. I want to kind of bring it back to talking a little bit about New Media Summit for you, because I've been to a lot of events. I paid for a lot of tickets, things like that. I was honored that you reached out to me a while back to come and be an icon. I was like, okay, what is this? And I got there. I didn't know what to expect, and I was just overwhelmed. You do a tremendous job. One of the best I've ever seen of really reaching out to those that are there, the 150 people that are there, helping them overcome issues, helping them really either get booked on or get their podcast launched. You do a lot of pre-coaching to help them kind of get prepared. You want to talk a little about that and your philosophy behind New Media Summit? Yeah.
So as similar boat as you, right? So I've attended a lot of events over the years, and I, look, I work from home. This is my home office here. I've got people on my team who are not in the same city as me, right? So reality is, a lot of the time it's just me and the phone and the microphone and the video camera, and that's it, right? And so it gets kind of lonely, right? And so I like to go out and go to conferences, because that's like my opportunity to meet new people, to develop new relationships, to develop business relationships, right, et cetera. So I've gone to a lot of events over the years, and there are certain things about events that I really like, and other things about events that I don't. And so what we try to do when I launched the New Media Summit is take the elements of what I really love about events and take the elements of my own experience of doing events and running nightclubs, and having nightclubs and so on. So, I mean, like all the things that I really like, I try to combine into this one event called the New Media Summit. And one of the main things, when we can talk about the pre-event training that we do, and yes, we do pre-event training to help people get their pitches down and have them practice their pitch and connect with the community and build relationships with others. And we do all of that before the event even happens. Not the least of which is help people create their Media One sheet, and my team actually does that for them, and so on. But reality is that one of the things that I have found about events to be so effective is when you give people the opportunity to not just be sort of this anonymous guest in the crowd, right? And you go to events, and even though there can be thousands of people there, you can leave an event with thousands of people and never even have a chance to develop a real relationship with anyone there. Because it's awkward, and a lot of people have their own cliques. Like, I mean, you and I will assume you've been to a podcast event or two. I know you do the meetup stuff and all that, right? And so I've been to the larger podcast events over the years, and reality is that, even in that environment, there are a lot of those folks are very cliquey. They know each other. They've developed these relationships, and it's kind of hard to break into those circles. And so what I really wanted to do was to create an event where there were no walls, where there were no iron curtains, where there were no VIP sections, where there were no, green rooms for people to, the speakers and the panelists and so on to sneak away to. And so, like, for instance, one of the biggest differences between our event and others is, well, when we bring in our podcasters like yourselves, we don't really give you an opportunity to go and just be by yourself, right? Like, we immerse you right there in the crowd. We have you sit at the tables with the other attendees. We don't, we don't separate the two. And I think just that in and of itself really is a big differentiator, because these folks, meaning the attendees, are there because they want to meet you guys, because they want to have an opportunity to pitch you, and because they want to get booked on your shows. And so if we set up this kind of iron curtain where, it's us and them, that I don't think that really works, right? So that's one of the biggest differentiators between our event and others, is there is no us and them. I mean, yes, you guys are on the stage, but after you come off the stage, you're right back there in the audience, right? I mean, you're right back there sitting at their tables. And so that's one of the ways that we have found that we're able to get people to connect. We provide lunch every day, and the icons of influence, as we call you, the podcasters. And you guys are all right there eating lunch with everybody and so on, right? So just small things that I've picked up over the years that I really like from other events that we've applied to this event. But the main thing is that I think one of the reasons why the event is as successful as it is because the promise of the event is very, very clear. And the promise of the event for the attendee is that you will come to this event and you will leave with bookings in hand. And I'm really proud to say that we have a 100% track record of attendees who attend the summit getting booked on shows. And so about 450 people, attendees now, have gone through the event. And every single one of those attendees has gotten booked on at least one show. And most attendees leave with 10 to 20 bookings on shows. And many leave with more than that, because it's not just the podcasters that have these high visibility platforms. It's also the audience and the members of the audience, right, who have their own high visibility platforms. Like, a lot of the folks in the audience have their own podcasts. A lot of them have their own blogs. A lot of them have their own social media channels like YouTube and so on. A lot of them do their own video summits and these sort of things. And so when we hand the microphone to each attendee, which is, again, one of the more unique things about our event, it's the only event that I know of where every single attendee and every single icon gets the microphone. Right? So no one can hide there. So all 150 attendees get the microphone, and they get to pitch everyone in attendance. So they literally get the microphone for 2 minutes, say whatever they want, do whatever they want. Obviously, we train them on how to pitch and how to get booked on shows, but it's their time. They can do what they want to do. And what ends up happening is not only do they then get booked on the shows of the icons, the podcasters who are there, but also the attendees, as I said, have their own platforms in their own right. So some folks get booked on 40, 50 different platforms by the time they leave the summit.
Mm-hmm. And it's great. You do actually put the icons on stage to give feedback to those that are giving their pitch. It's the voice kind of thing on chairs to spin around.
Yeah.
If they like it, they want to book it. I think it's a great thing. You know, if they spin around, they get booked, or they don't spin around. And that varies who's on stage, who can book it. But that was always a great thing, is giving the feedback, or hearing feedback from people on their pitches and helping them hone their skills. And I hadn't seen that done at any other place.
Yeah, we so appropriately enough, right? We call it the pitch, which is yes, it's absolutely a ripoff of The Voice, because I love how The Voice does it. And so yeah, we put the icons on the table. We put the icons on the panel, right, on the stage there, and they're all in chairs. And basically, what ends up happening is the attendees get to pitch everyone in the audience, and the icons are behind them. So ostensibly, when you're pitching, your back is to the icons. So you don't even know, how they're responding or not. And the icons, their backs are to the person pitching. So they can't really see and make a judgment based on, the person's appearance or anything like that. So they're just hearing. And if they like what they're hearing, then they turn around. And that's their indication of, yeah, I'd like to book you on my show. And so when they're done with their pitch, the attendee, then they turn around and they can see how many of the icons have turned to book them on their show, and so on. And we only have 8 icons on the stage at any one time, which means that there's 32 other icons in the audience, plus all of the attendees. So again, just trying to keep it fun, and yeah, that's a direct ripoff of The Voice, and I'm the first to admit it, because it works and I love it. It's a nice, unique way to do it.
But you threw the icons out there. Icons have to pitch too suddenly, which is great.
Uh-huh.
I love the dance floor. I think that puts everybody at a little bit more of a laid back, a little bit your DJ or your musical background. Yeah. Everybody dancing between the breaks, switching tables up, hot. Only a few hours at one table. It's just a great fun environment. Get everybody dance. You have a dance party one night actually, which is great.
Yeah, we definitely do things different. Again, kind of going back to the entertainment background, the music background, right, and so on. We bring in an LED dance floor, so kind of go Saturday Night Fever-ish, right? and I learned the hard way. The last time we did the summit, not in Austin, Texas, but the time before that in San Diego, actually put the dance floor right in front of the stage. And so that was interesting, because there was this big gap between me and everyone else, because I was like prioritizing the dancing, and it's like, oh, you live and you learn. But that was the first time we brought in the LED dance floor, and it was such a big hit that we've been bringing it back now. And this time we put it off to the side. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the ways that we get folks to kind of break down their fear, to really break down their apprehension of letting loose. And so, yeah, after all the breaks and during the breaks, I mean, we got a DJ and we're letting it go there on the dance floor, and we do a lot of line dances and so on to get people together, because it's really all about, look, reality is it's really all about authenticity, right? Mm-hmm. It's really all about just being who you are. And trying to get as close to that level of comfort as you possibly can with just being you. And in an environment like that, where you walk in and there's 190 people and you don't know a soul, it's hard to get comfortable. And so those are some of the things that we do. And like you said, every couple hours or so, we'll have them switch tables around just so they can sit with new people and not get too comfortable. So some of those elements of what we do, I think really does help to get folks to break out of that shell and get more comfortable and be willing to be more authentic and be willing to be more vulnerable, right? About just sharing kind of who they are and what they do, and just be that person rather than trying to be someone else.
Exactly. We got lots of people saying, Holly's on here. Yes, it was a totally great event, Steve. People loving it. Loving the Media Summit online and then also in the chat roll here. For those that are looking to start a podcast or relatively new, what's the best advice you can give somebody who's a new podcaster out there, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I will be the first to admit that the game has changed in just a very short period of time here. I mean, podcasting in the last couple of years has kind of come out of the just kind of the I don't want to say the closet, so to speak, but it's like, it's been kind of this um it's almost been like a hobby. It's almost been like a hobbyist type of medium for so long, right? And so to break into the mainstream as it really has been doing now over the past couple of years, yeah, I mean that in and of itself has really changed the medium. Once NPR came into the game and ESPN and some of the bigger media players came into the game, it really changed the face of podcasting. And in some ways that's a really good thing, right? Because it needed to get out of this CB radio, it needed to get out of the amateur hour, so to speak,
Yeah.
and become a little bit more of a professional medium if it was to be taken seriously. Now, that said, there is sort of the amateur-ish elements of it that still makes it fun and still makes it appealing. But the industry had to grow up a little bit in order to do things like have listenership outpace satellite radio. Right. I mean, for the first time ever in the first quarter of 2018, more people listen to podcasts than listen to satellite radio. Right. And that was a huge step towards, shall we say, normalcy, so to speak, or normalizing the medium. Right. Once Apple CarPlay and Google CarPlay came to the surface here, and getting to a podcast was as simple as a push of a button on the dashboard. Right. I mean, that's when things start to change. When you can literally say that podcasting is the new radio, that's when it, again, it's like, on one hand, we want to keep it just kind of this, this cottage industry, so to speak. But on the other hand, we need the exposure. We need the visibility, because a lot of us spend an inordinate amount of time, energy, and resources on our shows. And so, yes, there are just a fraction of podcasts as there are radio stations. Yes, there are a fraction of podcasts as there are blogs, right? Like, the numbers don't even compare. By some estimates, there's like 600,000 podcasts right now. And there are folks who will tell you that only about 75%, let's do it the other way around, only about 25% of those shows are still active. So that means, even because, in other words, people hit this pod fade thing 9 shows in, they say, yeah, I don't get the numbers, I'm fading out of here. So there's probably only about 100 to 150,000 active shows right now, which on one hand is like, okay, that's not a lot. It's not, that's really nothing. And it's true, it's not. But on the other hand, it's still very crowded, right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't have a lot of really great opportunities to be found. And so the question is, how do you get found, right? Because if you want to start a new show, you can't just bank on putting up a show and letting people find you. Like, it just doesn't happen organically anymore. And for those who have, these general business shows, and I won't name names here, but there are people who have these incredibly popular general business shows who have been the beneficiaries of the growth of this medium. But if they started those shows today, they wouldn't be doing jack with them. Those shows would not exist. They would not be found on the charts. And so that's a very long answer to your question, Scott, which is, if you're going to start today with the show, I absolutely believe that you have to serve a very niche audience. I mean, like what you do with No Closers. I mean, it's a perfect example. Like, if I started Reinvention Radio today, it probably would not do nearly as well as it is doing, because it's just too broad, right? And the narrower you can get in terms of who it is that you truly are compelled to serve, and creating a show that serves them, the easier it will be for you to find your audience and for your audience to find you. And a lot of us get caught up in these numbers. Like, oh, I want to have a show, that has 1 million downloads. I want to have a show that gets, 50,000 downloads an episode, and this, that, and the other. And, look, all the power to you. I hope that happens for you. But reality is that if you could have a really great niche show where you love what you're doing, and you love the content that you teach, or you love the interviews that you conduct, and it's very specific to a particular industry, even if you just have, let's say, 100 downloads an episode, which reality is that's on the smaller end of things. 100 downloads an episode is going to put you on the level of a smaller show. And so reality is, and let me just kick back. Hold on, let me get my video back on here.
Sorry about that.
No worries. And so when you have a show that is sort of smaller in scale, if you will, you just have to look at it this way. Is it like, for instance, I have a client who started a show that is specific to diabetes, right? And so the people who listen to that show are going to be people who either have diabetes or know or love someone who does, or they work in that industry, right? So even if there's just 100 downloads per episode, let's say, those are 100 people who have pulled that episode, who have raised their hand to say, I am interested in that topic. Those people are going to be ideal candidates for your products, programs, and services. And so would you take a speaking gig where 100% of the 100 people in that audience were interested in your area of expertise? And I guarantee you the answer, without a shadow of a doubt, is absolutely 100% yes, right? And so that's what I think folks need to be thinking about here as they move forward in this world of podcasting is, how can you take it as deeply as, just real niche, real narrow, go real deep on a subject, and forget about the numbers and just literally think about the content and literally think about that one person who you are most compelled to serve as one of your audience members.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a total great answer. So many people get so bogged in trying to do a multitude of things and just diving deep before you go wide. Mm-hmm. JJ, who was on this morning, talked about she had her one show that she was doing different episodes on, and then added, shows off of that. Whoops, damn it all. Hang on a second here.
I got you.
All right.
No worries. No worries.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. We'll get back here in a second.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
Basically, there we go. Sorry. Try to mute other people that are logging in here in a second here. But that's the biggest thing, is going narrow, go deep on that narrow of a subject, because you'll find the people you identify with the most, and then you can identify other arms off the other branches, I guess, as you could say, because you talked about that, the tree of marketing, the tree of podcasting for the most part, right?
Yeah, that's the way that I look at it is, and a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But I look at it as though podcasting is not a business. Mm-hmm. There is a thing that I would call the business of podcasting. But yeah, podcasting in and of itself, unless you're Joe Rogan or a very select few, is tough for podcasting itself to be a business. And so if you look at it from the standpoint of podcasting be a branch on the tree, in terms of one of the pieces that you use to complement your overall business offerings and business presence, then I think you're going to be thinking about it the right way. But if you expect to get rich off of podcasting, I'm not saying it's impossible, because it can happen, but it's highly unlikely unless you think about it in terms of how podcasting is a key component of your business and you look at it from that standpoint of the business of podcasting.
Yeah. Steve, what's the best way for people to find out more about you, the shows, or New Media Summit? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, man. So New Media Summit, right? That's the event we encourage as many people as possible to come and check out and come get booked on shows, meet people like Scott, like Melinda, like Mary, like Amy and JJ and everyone else who's been joining us here today. So yeah, go to newmediasummit.net. And then if you want more information about me personally, Steve Olsher, OLSHER.com.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking a chunk of your morning here to join us here. And thanks for bringing everybody together originally, because without New Media Summit, this venue would not be together as it is, man.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the lead on this, man. And happy International Podcast Day 2018.
Sounds great, man. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right. Good stuff with Steve there. Let's go ahead and do one other thing here. Unmute and bring it back on. There we go. Melinda, are you there?
I am, but I don't know. Yes, you can.
Yes,
I can see you.
Second.
I can even see myself. That's amazing.